Our scripture this morning is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn.
I am convinced that childhood innocence and the ability to draw a kangaroo are directly related. Ask a child, can you draw a kangaroo? They'll probably say yes. There might be silence as they reach for crayons. You possibly will get a flurry of questions in response. Why? How many kangaroos? Do you want a mommy with one in the pouch, or do you want the two boxing? If you ask an adult to draw a kangaroo and you happen to get a yes, you have either found an artist or a narcissist. Somewhere along the way, we go from being willing to try to scared to fail. Somewhere along the way, we go from an ability to imagine success to only imagining judgment. Somewhere innocence is lost. And I'm not sure, I don't think it's really from watching TV or listening to music. I don't think it's from hearing bad words or even from hitting puberty. Somewhere innocence is lost. And I think it has more to do with anything drawing kangaroos. When we're no longer willing to try. When we've been taught that it's better to hunker down. When we've been convinced that someone else might do it better. When we prepare for judgment and shame, rather than preparing for peace and hope. That's when innocence is lost. That's when we forget how to dream like a child. Genesis 1, all the way back in the beginning of the Bible, tells us a couple of important things. One is that we are all created in the image of God. And by that, it is a creation story, right? So if we're all created in the image of God, what's the one thing we know about God at this point? God's a creator. We are created in the image of God, and the first thing we know about God, first thing we see God doing in Scripture is creating. God is a creator. We are created in the image of God, thus we are creators by nature. We create life biologically. We create relationships socially. We create beauty artistically. We also create a lot of other stuff, right? Hierarchies, divisions, bad TV shows, wounded hearts. We create messes. There are different approaches to dealing with messes. When there's a spill in a family on the floor, you can often see the different approaches. Some start from the edges and start working inward, right? Others just take a long roll of paper towels and put it over the mess and hope it goes away. We all create messes. We just have different approaches to them. Some will jump right into the middle of the mess, into the heart of it, and work their way outward. Now, the first option, working from the edges, allows us to take the issue in portions. We can even step away from the mess if we need, right? We're not going to drag it out somewhere. We're right at the edge. We can take it at our convenience. Throwing the towel over it is another option. And while that might get you elected in many states, and you might even become president, it doesn't actually guarantee the mess will ever be dealt with. God seems to favor the third option, jumping right into the middle. In a world that was and still is a hot mess in so many ways, God plops down right in the middle of all of it. And that's the message of Christmas. Incarnation. That's the message of Christmas. God dropped right down into the middle of the hot mess of being human, right down into the human experience and into our lives. There are a lot of other layers, deep layers, but at the heart of Christmas is Emmanuel, God with us. Someone prays, God, what do we do with all this mess? And God says, move over, let's see. That's the core of Christmas. Now, how does God suggest we clean up the mess? Hope, peace, joy, love. These are the tools. These are the ShamWows in God's cleaning closet. Which tool do you need? We don't know till we jump in sometimes. What tool does our neighbor need right now? We don't know till we jump in. What tool do our children need right now? We won't know until we jump into their lives. We have to jump into the mess, into tough questions, into complicated issues, into messy emotions. So let's jump into the Christmas story today with a little more honesty than sometimes we do. Most of this story is a distraction. Most of the Christmas story is a distraction. We've spent from mid-July all the way to the beginning of Advent doing a walk through the scripture chronologically. It gives us the context so that we understand the genealogies for Christmas, of why that's there. We understand the different roles Jesus was playing within the Jewish community. We understand some of the sacrificial atonement stuff that Jesus speaks to within the Jewish culture. But Jesus wasn't just for a Jewish audience. So really, in the grand scheme of things, if this is a story that anyone can understand, if the main message is for all people, then the context isn't core to receiving the message. It just adds layers to it. But mostly the characters in the story are a distraction. They're not really necessary. For example, does it matter if Mary and Joseph are from a specific family tree? Does that change the message of God's presence with us? No. They could have been from any random family tree, and God present with us doesn't change. There are just details there to help connect us to the story, to connect those who first heard it, to see themselves as part of it. Does it matter where the Magi brought the gifts? If they showed up at their house or at a manger, or if it was before or after they went to Egypt for safety? If you read the scripture, it's hard to tell when the Magi show up. And it says there were 3 gifts, but it doesn't say how many Magi. We don't know. The Magi, in some ways, besides being the place that Americans decide to insert diversity into the nativity set, the other role that Magi give is symbolic. They're from afar. They're not from within the community. Jesus is going to be for everybody. And that's great. But do we need them there? Does the number of gifts they bring, does when they show up, does their history, their names, and where they're from make any difference to the Christmas story? No. Does it change the message that God is present with all of us? No. It's just details to help us share the story. I'm going to step on some toes here. Does it matter if Mary was a virgin? Does it matter if she and Joseph had had sex beforehand? Does any of it matter to God's presence with us and the reality of that? We have been hung up fighting for thousands of years as Christians over details of a story to which the details don't matter. If we are seeking proof, evidence, details to go with faith, then we've already missed the concept of faith. The idea of God's presence with us came before the Christmas story. This was a new incarnation of it, a new telling of it, a way to understand God in a way that all people could grasp a hold of. So the details aren't as important as the message. God is with us. If we find ourselves arguing over all the details of the story that are there to show how special Jesus was for those receiving it, if we're arguing over those details, we've missed the point of the message and no one's listening to us anyway. Mary might have been a virgin. Jesus might have come to a dad named Joseph who might have been a carpenter and might have been out of the family tree of David. Angels might have delivered all kinds of messages, or the early church might have exaggerated a little. I don't know. And either way, I don't care because God is with us. The story is beautiful. It's rich, it's got layers and meaning, and we can tease out different things that impact our life from it. But in the end, God is with us, and that's all that matters. And if we let anything distract us from that, we will miss Christmas. Christians have spent thousands of years judging each other over the details, dividing themselves over the details. Proving the factuality of inerrancy of a scripture doesn't change the message of the scripture. Proving anything that we have allowed to divide us only divides us more. Christmas isn't something you can prove. Incarnation's not based on your genetic code or your family tree. Incarnation is for all of us. It's God with all of us, not just those of us of the right bloodline or the right social class or those that put their pinky out when they drink the tea. It's for all of us. Incarnation is not based on purity, fairness, or our family history. It's for all of us. God is just as incarnate, as present in the California Institution for Men, as in this sanctuary, as in a big mega church with speakers. And we can't pretend that God's not in any of the three. God is just as present in the mosque, in the middle of a labyrinth of prayer, in a Buddhist temple, at a frat party, at a Trump rally. God is just as present. The question is, are we listening to God? Are we there? Are we letting God in? Are we making room? The incarnation is everywhere, all places, and all times. We don't get to limit Christmas. Obsessing over the details is like throwing a towel over the mess and forgetting that God's called us to jump in it. We have within us the potential to make a profound difference. We are creators. We are joined by our Creator here in this time, in this reality. God has jumped in and invites us to test the waters. More than that, take the plunge. We are creators and we are joined by our Creator in this time and this place. So when someone calls out, "Can you draw a kangaroo?" the answer is, let's find out. When someone asks, "Can you find a home for every human being?" let's find out. Can you untangle systemic racism? Let's find out. Can you heal from generations of hurt? Let's find out. We have within us the potential to make profound difference. We are creators. We are joined by our Creator in this time and in this reality. Not just us, but those around us. Those who are sure they can't draw a straight line. God is with them too. They are creators just the same as us, and we have to invite them to draw again. We have to invite them to dream like a child. We need to be handing out God's love and crayons like nobody's business. When someone asks, "How can you be gay and Christian?" we say, jump in and come find out. When someone says, how can you question the Bible and feel closer to God? We say, jump in, come find out. When someone says, how can you use your brain and not get lost in doubt? Jump in, come find out. When someone says, do you think God could really love me? Jump in, find out. Do you think a community could really love me? Jump in, come with me. Take my hand and let's jump together, and we will find out. And if all of this seems too scary, let's just start inviting people to draw a kangaroo and see what God does with them. See where God might lead them, where God might lead us. Today is Christmas. God is with us. Jump in.